Today begins Read Aloud. So, the first book of the year is one that I hope you've not read already. If you already have, well, you get to listen to it again. It's different if you have read it and if you hear somebody else read it. A lot of times you hear things that you hadn't heard before or that you hadn't read. So, the first thing that I always do when we do a read aloud is I'll give you a copy of the cover so that you can really keep an eye on what's going on. And then we always do some observations. So in your read aloud journal, if you've not already written read aloud on the front of it, you're going to need to go ahead and do that. Make sure you have some type of a writing utensil. It can either be a pencil, it can be a pen, it can be a fun gel pen. It's up to you. Just don't do it in marker because that will not work. So once you have that ready to go, you can decide how you're going to take notes. So one thing that I always want you to do is write down the title of the chapter. Sometimes the chapters don't have titles and you have to make up your own title. Sometimes people decide they don't like the title that was given to that chapter and they want to come up with their own title. So it'll be up to you if you want to change the title, give it a title, or keep it the way that it is. But if it doesn't have a title at all, I want you to come up with your own title. We'll do discussion along the way, especially when we're in class. It's hard to do discussion when we're virtual. That's why I'm really going to expect you to be writing things down in your journal because we may be doing some discussion online and virtually, and I'll ask you what you think about what I read so we can talk about it. So think about what things are important and what you want to write down. The first book that I'm going to share with you is called Save Me a Seat, and it is by Sarah Weeks, and it is by Gita Varadarajan, and I'm not sure if I said that name correctly. If I did not, I apologize. So for those of you that know how to say that name correctly, you can help me with that pronunciation. So you're going to want to make sure, since you don't have a copy of the cover, that you write down the name of the book and that you write down the author's names. Then what I want you to do is I want you to take a few minutes and I want you to write down your observations. What do you see? What do you see on the cover of this book? Write your observations down. Actually stop the video. Write your observations down before you go on and you start to listen to me reading the book. So go ahead and do that now. Once you have your observations written down, then go ahead, start it up again, and we'll begin the book. Did you write down your observations? If not, make sure you do that. Okay, so we're going to start with Monday, chicken fingers. It's not the first chapter, but it's the first part of the book is called Monday, Chicken Fingers. Chapter 1 is called Ravi. So make sure you write that down. Here we go. Most people in America cannot pronounce my name. On the first day at my new school, my teacher, Mrs. Bean, is brave enough to try. Suryanyane, she says, her eyebrows twitching as she attempts to sound it out. Suryaniriyanan, I say slowly. She tries again, but it is no better. I'm going to work on that, she says with a laugh. I laugh too. Suryaniriyanan is my surname. My first name is Ravi. It's pronounced Ravi, with a soft Ra and a strong V. In Sanskrit, it means the sun. In America, people call me Ravi, with the stress on the first syllable. That doesn't mean anything. Patience is a virtue, Amma reminds me often. She believes that, with time, people will learn how to say our names correctly. My grandmother tells her not to hold her breath. We moved to Hamilton, New Jersey a few months ago, May 13th to be exact. I am fresh off the boat, as they say. My father got a promotion at his IT company in Bangalore, so they transferred him to America. In India, Amma, Appa, and I had our own house with a cook and a big garden. We even had a driver to take us wherever we needed to go. My grandparents lived in their own flat nearby. Now we all live together in a townhouse in a place called Hamilton Mews. Things are very different here in America. Appa takes the train to work. We don't have a cook anymore, so Amma has to prepare all the meals herself. Our new house is much smaller than the old one. There is only one bathroom upstairs, which I share with my grandparents. I wouldn't mind so much, except that Paripa takes long showers and Parima leaves her teeth in a glass by the sink at night. I learned to speak English when I was very young. We speak mostly English at home, and I went to an English medium school, but for some reason, people here in New Jersey have trouble understanding me when I speak. I am trying to learn how to swirl my tongue to sound more American. My grandmother doesn't like it. Be proud of who you are and remember where you come from, she tells me. If you're not careful, you'll turn into one of them. Your grandfather didn't slave any tea plantations so that his only grandson would become some rude, overweight, beef-eating cowboy. I don't think Parima likes America. My school in India was called Vidya Mandir, which means Temple of Knowledge. My new school is called Albert Einstein Elementary. Parima could hardly wait to show off to all of her friends at home that her grandson had been accepted to a school named after a scientific genius. I am not a scientific genius, but I am a very good student. My favorite subjects are math, English, and sports, especially cricket. Boys and girls, please welcome our new student, Ravi, Mrs. Beam says after she has taken the roll call. He's come to us all the way from India. Isn't that exciting? Mrs. Beam is short and round. When she smiles, her eyebrows touch each other. As I look around the room, I see a sea of mostly white faces staring back at me. I feel a little nervous. It is my first day of 5th grade in room 506, and I am the only Indian in my class. There is one other, a boy named Dylan Samreen, but he doesn't count. He is an ABCD, American-born confused Desi. Desi is the Hindi word for Indian. I can tell Dylan is an ABCD because he speaks and dresses more like an American than an Indian. Tell us something about yourself, Ravi, Mrs. Beam says, smiling at me. Yes, ma'am, I say, standing at attention. Everyone laughs. Mrs. Beam claps her hands. Boys and girls, where are your manners? She asks. Go on, Ravi. We're listening. I push up my glasses and continue. My name is Ravi Suryanariyanan, and I just shifted from Bangalore. Everyone laughs again. What's so funny, I wonder? Mrs. Beam claps her hands. Her eyebrows are twitching like mad. Boys and girls, is this how we welcome a new student to Albert Einstein? The room gets quiet. The spotlight is on me. I can feel the whole class staring. This is my first day of school in America, and things are not going well. Mrs. Beam turns to me. You can call me Mrs. Beam, she says softly, and Ravi. Here in America, students don't need to stand up when the teacher calls on them. Do you understand? Of course I do. I push up my glasses and rub my nose. It's something I do when I'm nervous. Mrs. Beam comes over to my desk. She has a look of pity on her face. Don't worry, Robbie, she says, patting me on the shoulder. You can introduce yourself to the class later, after you've had a little time to work on your English. We have a very nice teacher named Miss Frost in the resource room. I'm sure she can help you. I want to say, 1, my English is fine. 2, I don't need Mrs. Frost. 3, I was on the top of my class at Vidya Mandir. But here's what I do instead. 1, I push up my glasses. 2, I rub my nose. 3, I sit down and fold my hands. My friends and teachers at Vidya Mandir would have a good laugh if they could see me now, their star student taken for an idiot. What a joke! Mrs. Beam is writing out our homework on the board. I open my notebook and carefully copy down the assignment. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Dylan Samarine staring at me. He looks like a movie star straight out of Bollywood. His long, shiny black hair falls over one eye. With a quick jerk of his head, he shakes it away. Then he smiles and winks at me. I smile back. Dylan Samarine may be an ABCD, but I think he wants to be my friend. Chapter 2 is called Joe. My name is Joe, but that's not what most people call me. Not at Einstein, anyway. I've never been a big fan of school except for lunch. Eating is the one thing I'm really good at. I've always been tall for my age, but lately I've been growing so fast my clothes don't fit anymore. Even the ones we bought a few weeks ago. I'm always hungry. A lot of kids wouldn't be caught dead eating school lunch. They call it mystery meat and slop. But I don't mind. Every week it shows up in the same order. Chicken fingers, hamburgers, chili, macaroni and cheese, pizza. By the way, it's not a coincidence that Tuesday is burger day and Wednesday is chili day, because at Einstein, hamburgers get recycled. It's not as bad as it sounds. The leftover burgers from Tuesday get dumped into a big pot with beans and some other junk, and presto chango, on Wednesday you've got chili. Everybody knows I don't talk much at school. My best friends, Evan and Ethan, used to call me Blabbermouth as a joke, but I guess I'm not going to be hearing that much now, since they both moved away over the summer. To be honest, they were a little weird, but I'm going to miss them anyway. Evan and Ethan and I ate lunch every day together last year, and they had to go to the resource room for extra help, same as me. Not that we had the same problems, for one thing. They were both super hyper, and I'm not. This year, I'll have to go by myself to see Miss Frost, and I'm not sure who I'm going to eat lunch with. Probably no one. People think you're unfriendly if you don't talk to them, but they don't understand that it's a problem for me that it's so noisy in the cafeteria. My brain and noise don't get along. Last year, I had Mr. Barnes for my teacher. Mr. Barnes is epic. He can bounce a hacky sack off his knee 100 times without messing up. I had never heard of a hacky sack until Mr. Barnes brought it to school. It was pink, which Dylan Samarine thought was hilarious. He said something mean about it behind Mr. Barnes's back. And all the girls laughed. Sometimes I wonder what's wrong with girls, but then I remember I already know what's wrong with girls. Everything. Mr. Barnes is African American. He shaves his head and wears bow ties. Real ones you have to tie yourself. He must have talked to Miss Frost about me, because he never asked me to read out loud in front of the class or come up to the board to do math problems. He understood those things are hard for kids like me. Some people don't mind having everybody looking at them, like Dylan Samarine, for instance. He wears his pants pulled down low with his underwear sticking out the top. He wants people to see it. His boxers have dollar signs on them, or dice, or lobsters, and he has special ones for holidays too, with candy corn or Christmas trees or red hearts for Valentine's Day. Dylan's famous for his boxers, but his real claim to fame is his tongue, which is long and pointy like a devil's. When he sticks it out, it makes the girls scream. He thinks he's the smartest kid at Einstein, and he might be right. He's definitely the meanest. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be Dylan Samarine, but that is something I'll never know. Mr. Barnes was the first teacher I've ever had who liked me. Miss Frost likes me, but she likes everybody, so it doesn't count. On my final report card, Mr. Barnes wrote that I was a valuable member of the community. My mom was so proud she stuck it on the refrigerator with a magnet. It's still there. Today is the first day of school, and Mr. Barnes is the first person I run into when I get there. He's wearing a red bow tie with little blue whales on it. I'm pretty sure it's new, or at least I've never seen it before. Last year, Mr. Barnes had 17 different bow ties that he always wore in the same order, starting with the green one with white diamonds and ending with the orange and purple striped one. Mr. Barnes's bow ties were another one of my favorite sequences. "Yo, Joe," he says, "how does it feel to be a fifth grader?" "Good," I tell him, "at least so far." Maybe this year it will be different, I think. Maybe Dylan Samreen won't be in my class. But when I get to room 506, there he is, standing over by the windows with his underwear hanging out. Polka dots. Lucy Mulligan and a bunch of her annoying girlfriends are standing around him chanting, "Do it! Do it! Do it!" They want him to stick out his tongue, but Dylan won't. "Come on, Sam Marine, let's give them what they want," Tom Dinkins shouts before sticking out his own tongue and wagging it at the girls. Tom Dinkins is a Dylan Samreen wannabe. The girls don't care about his tongue. "I warn you," Dylan tells his fan club, "I think it grew a little over the summer." Lucy and her friends start jumping up and down and screaming, "Ew!" One thing I will say about Dylan Samreen, he really knows how to play a crowd. All the screaming starts to get to me, so I do the in 2, 3, out 2, 3 breathing Miss Frost taught me. If that doesn't work, I'll have to use my earplugs. I always keep a pair in my pocket, just in case. They come in different colors, but I like the tan ones best, because they don't show as much. They're made out of some kind of squishy foam rubber, and when I wear them, I can still hear people talking, only it's softer, like when you're underwater or have a pillow over your head. I'm allowed to wear my earplugs in school whenever I want, but mostly I use them in the cafeteria, on the playground, and in gym class. "Settle down and take your seats," announces Mrs. Beam, my new teacher. This is her first year teaching at Einstein, and she looks a lot younger than any of the other teachers I've had. She's shaped kind of funny, wider on the bottom than the top, and she's shorter than me, which is weird considering she's my teacher. She seems nervous, and there's something freaky about her eyebrows. At Einstein, kids have to sit in alphabetical order. Every year since kindergarten, my seat has been right behind Dylan's. I know the back of his head by heart. Mrs. Beam has made name cards for us and put them on the desks, but when I go to take my seat behind Dylan, somebody's already sitting in it. He's a shrimpy-looking kid with thick glasses and greased-down black hair parted on the side. I've never seen him before, and I'm not sure where he's from. His skin is darker than mine, but not as dark as Dylan's or Caleb Burrell's. When I look at the card sitting on his desk, I see his name is about a mile long and full of Y's and A's. He seems kind of nervous, too. He keeps rubbing his nose and looking down at his hands, which are folded in his lap like he's in church or something. His shirt is so white it hurts my eyes to look at, and he's got it tucked in and buttoned all the way up to the top. When Mrs. Beam asks him to tell the class about himself, he stands up like he's in the army and calls her ma'am, which is about the only word he says you can actually understand. Everybody starts laughing, and for a minute I think, hey, maybe fifth grade isn't going to be so bad after all. Maybe Dylan Samreen will decide to pick on this new kid with the weird name and the funny accent instead of me. Chapter 3. Ravi. Mrs. Beam tells us we are going to play some games called icebreakers. I can already tell that the school in America is going to be easy for me. At Vidya Mandir, we never played games during class. On my first day of fourth grade, my teacher, Mrs. Arun, gave us a test. The first game Mrs. Beam teaches us is called fruit salad. I am on a team called bananas, and Dylan is on the apples. Another game is called wink murder. In this game, one person is the murderer, and he or she has to knock people out by winking at them. I find this game a bit confusing, because even when Dylan is not chosen to be the murderer, he still winks at me. The last game we play is called Ven Friends. For this game, Mrs. Beam assigns us partners. I hope that she will put me with Dylan Samreen. But instead, my partner is a pale, skinny girl called Emily Mooney. You'll have a few minutes to interview each other, Mrs. Beam explains. Find out as much as you can about your partner. For instance, what kind of music does he or she like? What is his or her favorite food or sport? When you've finished your interviews, you'll create a Venn diagram showing all the things you have in common. What the heck? Says a red boy with freckles. He doesn't know what a Venn diagram is, so Mrs. Beam has to explain it. At Vidyaman, dear, we learned how to make a Venn diagram in 3rd grade. Each of you must draw a circle and fill it with a list of things your partner enjoys, Mrs. Beam says. Then you and your partner will draw 2 overlapping circles. Where the circles intersect, you'll make a list of all the things you've discovered you have in common. At first, I think this will be an easy game for me, but every time I try to ask Emily Mooney a question, she giggles and says, "Hey, what?" Then, when I try to answer her questions, she does the same thing. Appa says that someday I will be interested in girls, but that day has definitely not come yet. When Mrs. Beam calls time, the only thing Emily Mooney and I have found to place in the intersection of our diagram is that we are both in room 506, and that was my idea. I am glad when Mrs. Beam tells us it's time to get ready for lunch. At Vidya Mandir, our lunch period began at 1 o'clock. 5th graders at Albert Einstein Elementary School eat lunch at 11:30 in the morning. When I get to the lunchroom, the first thing I do is look for Dylan. When I get to the lunchroom, the first thing I do is to look for Dylan Samrin. In India, my best friend Pramad and I always ate lunch together. Afterwards, we'd play cricket in the field behind the school. I spot Dylan standing in the queue waiting to buy his lunch. They are serving something I have never heard before called chicken fingers. Most of the tables are filling up quickly, but I spot an empty table on the opposite side of the lunchroom and sit down. While I wait for Dylan to join me, I carefully lay out the cloth napkin that my mother packed for me, neatly folded with a spoon tucked into it. I'm not feeling very hungry, but Amma will be upset if I don't eat the lunch she made me. Uppama, made with pure desi ghee, she said as she stirred the pot this morning. Semolina will give you plenty of energy for your first day of school, Ravi. Too lumpy, Parima criticized, looking over my mother's shoulder as she cooked. I am just getting ready to open my stainless steel tiffin box when Dylan Samrin walks by carrying his tray. I caught a glimpse of his underwear earlier in class. There are red dots on it. I think about my own underwear, clean, white Hanes from Kohl's that my mother insists on ironing. There's no way I would ever let my underwear hang out like that, whatever the kind of underwear it is. I thought Dylan and I would eat together, but instead he goes and sits down at a table in the corner by the window with some of the other boys. I had been looking forward to having a good laugh with him about Mrs. Beam suggesting that I need special help. But it's okay. I'm not worried. I'm sure that Dylan and I are going to be friends. He's been smiling and winking at me all morning. A big white kid with yellow hair and a wrinkled shirt comes and puts his tray down at the other end of my table. He doesn't say hello to me, just sits down on the bench. He's so big the table shakes and my tiffin box jumps. I recognize him as the guy who sits behind me in class, but I don't remember his name. He doesn't seem very friendly. He picks up his fork and starts shoving food into his mouth and doesn't stop eating until his plate is clean. I think maybe he forgot to eat breakfast, and what's he got into his ears. I'm feeling a little hungry now too. I spread the napkin on my lap and bend down, sniffing at the upama. Parima was wrong. It's perfect, not lumpy at all, so I gobble it down quickly. I need to wash my hands and rinse my mouth, but for some reason there isn't any sink in the lunchroom. I look at my watch. I still have 10 minutes left until the bell rings, so I tuck the spoon back into the napkin, place it in my tiffin box, and buckle the lid. As I'm on my way out of the lunchroom to wash up in the boys' bathroom, a roar of laughter comes from the table in the corner by the window. Dylan Sammarine must have made a good joke because everyone is slapping him on the back and treating him like a hero. I smile to myself. I know exactly how it feels to be that guy. I know something else too. Tomorrow I will not be eating lunch alone. I will be sitting at the table in the corner by the window right next to Dylan Sammarine. And that is all the reading that we have time for today. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to go ahead and I'd like you to tell me about Ravi and Joe and Dylan. So how would you describe each of the characters? How do they look? And how do they act? What are their personality traits like? So take a little bit of time before you put away your read aloud journal for the day and describe how you would describe each of those three characters. And we're going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying the book so far. Thanks.